you
You're on board there,
forgot to
Hank.
tell you that part, didn't they, Hank?
Yeah, no, they didn't tell me. They told me none of that. No.
Well, thank everyone for joining us on the call today. We've got Hank Sullivan, and Hank's going to share with us how he creates targeted classes using the strategic planning process. So with that, Hank, it's all you.
Oh, it is. Okay. Hi, folks. Now, the way we're going to do this today is I have no presentation. This is a discussion. And I'm going to tell you how I do it because it's just worked for me. For some folks, it doesn't work, and I'll tell you, but I've been doing this targeted classes with this for about 7 years now. So, and give or take 7 years ago, in a conversation with a few people, it became evident that they thought planning was something that large corporations did, and that's the only people who did it. And when they were with large corporations, they'd start the planning sometime in the summer, and it would get done about November or December, and it was a process and a half. So they didn't want to do that. So they had no interest in it. But the way the conversation went, I said, how can you get anywhere if you don't plan? You got to have some kind of plan. Well, you know, I don't want to do that. So I thought about it, and so I decided at that time, I've changed slightly since, but at that time I said, annual goals review is in fact planning. It's a plan. We don't call it strategic planning. We call it an annual goals review, but it contains a number of the pieces out of the strategic planning process. And it's less intimidating to the micro businesses, and I deal primarily with micro businesses. Now, when I say micro, you know, under 25 employees, but primarily under 10. And so today, I would think a lot of small businesses wish they had a plan. And I say, now what do I do moving forward? How am I going to do this? How am I going to survive? And so what I did was I approached people and I said, come the first week in December, I'm going to put on a 2-day, 4 hours each day seminar on how to create, quote, a mini business plan. And I intentionally called it that, again, for the intimidation factor. Take it away. This isn't what you did in corporate America, but it is a plan. And we will be going through stuff. And at the end of the 2 days, you will have the semblance of a plan that you can implement over the course of the year. You start now, obviously, and people think of January 1 as always a starting point. Now, having gone through what we've been through, all of us have been through in recent months. By the way, today is day 61 for me, lockdown. I'm going back, batty, but so isn't everybody else on the call probably. So I think there's going to be a whole bunch of potential to do just this kind of stuff. Because now moving forward, they got to change. I don't know what that change is going to be, and everybody's going to be an individual. And I'll give you an example of somebody who's already approached me. This guy had a franchise to do those coupon mailings to homes. And it doesn't make any difference, it's just one of them. And so he got the franchise, he owns a couple of counties here in the area, and the business was going okay. Well, guess what happened when they shut it down? His business went to zero. Nobody was advertising. Advertising to who? And so they turned to the franchisee, and the franchisee said, sorry, nothing we can do to help you. So as of last week, him and 9 other franchisors out in wherever have formed a new company. And they're being sued by the other one, but that's, they said, we got to survive, and it's going to have to be different. So they've literally created a whole new company. And they're not going to do it the way they did it before. It's not going to look the same, physically the same. They're not going to go necessarily after the same clients and whatever. Do they need a plan? Absolutely, they need a plan. And so it's setting up a plan for them. Now, the other one I'm doing it with happens to be a group that is working with wounded warriors. And that whole thing has changed because they do it based on contributions. And now they got a problem. And how are they going to change that? So everybody's going to operate differently. So I think the potential for us as a group is unlimited. I think literally almost any business you approach today needs a plan. The big ones, I think we'll be working with bigger corporations, I guess, and want to do the traditional stuff. This is what I call non-traditional, yet it has all the components of it. So I'll ask a question just by, we can raise hands. How many of you have actually used annual goals review in a planning mode? Anybody? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so out of the group, only 4. Now, you have to ask yourself, why not? And my guess is it's not the way we looked at it. And when I first looked at it in this fashion, it wasn't about taking a person and saying, let's get your goals together. This was taking a business and saying, let's get your act together. So Wendy can tell you, what I did was 7 years ago, when I first ordered it, I said, don't give me the personal section, take it out. So all I did was I went with the organizational stuff. And the reason my thinking there was, if they bite into that and actually do it, leadership is the follow-on. And that has actually happened. So they've got a plan, but now how do I effectively operate and lead my organization? So that has led to other businesses. But today we're going to just talk about how this works. What I did last year when Wendy and company introduced the new strategic planning process, I said, you know what, why don't I try something different? And I took that and I presented it as, this is the next step. This isn't a mini plan, this is a real plan. And interestingly enough, about half the people who had been through this process with me signed on. I didn't add any hours to it, it's still an 8-hour process. I offered it, however, in 2 ways. One is a 1-day, start in the morning and end at night. The other is still a 2-day, 4 hours each day, with time in between where they could do stuff. And I got people to sign up for both. So it's been an interesting way of approaching, I think, strategic planning, and I think that's why they asked me to present it to you, to say, okay, well, are there enough businesses out there who could use something like this? I've positioned it, you'll ask later, so I'll answer it now. I positioned it as a low entry fee, because you're going to have groups, and I was after getting anywhere from 7 to 10 people together. I would not do more than 10. And I recommend you don't do more than 10 with this stuff. There's too many questions they're going to ask. And I charged them $8.95 a person. If you brought 2 people, it's $8.95 twice, because you got another person asking questions, and it may be the same company, and a few have done that. Mostly it's one. The one will show up and do it. So I don't think that the process, if you pick the annual goals review or strategic planning, is a huge difference. Obviously strategic planning has a little more meat to it, and a little more detail. And those who did it liked it. Some of them didn't know that was another way. But it works, both have worked for me, and I would easily do both. So it is my intention now, as soon as somebody says I'm allowed to leave my house legitimately for business, unbelievable, never thought I'd be here, but then I'm going to offer this as a method to overcome what happened to your business. Because it's easy to say, is your business in a shambles? Yes. What are you going to do to change that? I don't know. Voila. This could help them, I think. So I think we can offer a tremendous help to all kinds of business people who would have never even thought about doing this before because they don't know what to do tomorrow morning to survive. So far, any questions? Anybody?
Yeah, Hank, I have a question. When you were allowed to do these sessions in person,
Yeah.
Did you find any resistance to the varying businesses sharing?
No.
Not at all.
No, that was it was a concern. And I told them up front, you don't have to share anything you don't want to. But I was shocked, actually, at the openness of the people. After about an hour, first it's, they're doing the thing. But no, they were talking numbers and they were talking clients. And what they didn't want to have happen, and what I tried to make sure it didn't happen, is they didn't have a competitor in the room.
Oh.
So I promised them there'd be no competitors in the room.
Yeah.
So they don't have to worry about sharing that stuff. But shy of that, no, there was. And I've done it enough years now to know, no, within an hour, they're all, and the way I facilitate it is I'm taking the process, and all of you got the facilitation stuff that the association has put together. Some of you use it, some of you created your own stuff, but whatever you have, and I'm just walking them through it. Now, there's a time gap. You got to be really timely on this one because you've got 8 hours to go through the whole thing. They know that, and we keep repeating it. Got to keep moving. So then I'll say, okay, I present a session to them. Let me just flip over. I'm using right at the moment, the annual goals review. I actually have them complete the operational evaluation questions. And I say, okay, you now have 20 minutes to complete that. And they've got to go through. And I explain to them how it works, the yes, no, and the related and not related and all that. And then they got to answer all the questions. They're not talking to one another, they're just answering questions. Now at the end, during it, what happens? Somebody hits and says, well, I'm not a producer. I don't produce product. Okay, then skip over the questions. Just keep moving. But other than that, and it also is probably the first time they've actually analyzed their company. That's the feedback I get. That's the first time I really dug and looked at every piece of my business in one session.
Hank, have you entertained the thought of doing that as pre-work, given the the compactness of the time constraints, or does it need explanation?
Did I think about it? Yes. Did I do it? No.
Yeah.
And the reason I didn't is I'm going back to my assumption. My assumption is that they're not really good at making business plans. They're operational. They're making something, or they're selling something, or they're doing something. I mean, I have people ranging from window washing companies, insurance companies, massage therapists. I mean, it's an eclectic group who have signed on for this. And they are a chiropractor. I got one chiropractor, husband and wife, 2 separate businesses, and they show up every year. Now, they're an ongoing coaching client on top of that. So everybody's going to look at it differently. Some are going to say, I don't want this, obviously. I don't want this. All right, fine. But it's an easy way for them. That's why I'm thinking when Wendy put this together, or when Trusted Advisors put it together, we didn't know we'd be at this situation at this moment in time. But now, looking at it going forward, don't think about the number of clients you already have for other reasons, Could they use something like this? I contend yes. A lot of them. Now, all? No, probably not. But a lot of them do. And so if you offer it to them at a really, and it's not expensive, obviously. So for a minimum price, and so what are you getting out of it? You put 10 people in a room for 2 days and you're going to put in your pocket, what? $9,000? Is that worth it to you? I think so. That's me. For them, it's 900. Big deal. So we're not talking lots of money, but we are talking lots of potential output for them. And so when they see they get the return for a minimum investment, are they looking for more? So yeah, I've had quite a few who said yes. So it's I think it makes sense. That's why. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Hank, this is
Hank, I
Sandy.
have
Sandy.
Yeah, quick question. Can you say a little bit more about when you choose to use the annual goals review versus, using the strategic planning, the new strategic planning process? Do you target like people who've already done the annual goals review with you to move over to the strategic planning, or how do you market them differently to whoever comes?
That's exactly how it happened. Last fall, well, was it last spring that we introduced the strategic planning, Wendy?
Yeah, it was around that. It was like last February or so.
Okay. So I bought it, I had it, and, and thinking about using it, but hadn't done anything. And about September, October, I got contacted by 2 of my prior people and said, hey, are we doing that again this year? Yes. And that made me stop and say, okay, well, if I want to do it again, could I up the ante? Could I do something better? And I said, yeah, why don't I use the strategic planning process this time for them? And then I had I had 2 groups this year, and the other group were more brand new, so I used goals review. But I could have used both without any hesitation. It's all how I'm going to manipulate the information and present it to them. But there's more things to do in the other one, so it's a faster pace. That's what I found. You have to keep moving faster.
Hey, Hank.
Yeah.
I've used the strategic planning in a targeted class, and and that was fun to do. I've never used annual goals review. How do you a couple of tips on how you keep it interactive? Because I know it's kind of, they fill it out, you come back together, fill it out more, you come back together. How do you keep it interactive?
Okay. Think about if any of you happen to have the annual goals review, and I obviously use it, but you start off with the questions. So you've got the operational, you got the people, time management, which I don't spend a lot of time on. And I have them go, that's the first thing they do. And I break it into 3 pieces. And so they've got about 20 minutes on each. So after about the first 2 hours, they've analyzed their company. Now, what's the next thing? The next thing is core values. That's the same thing as strategic planning. What are your values? Again, in the size companies I'm talking to, what do you figure the percentage of them have ever thought that through? Almost none. I have to explain what core values means and related to their business. And the feedback from that particular piece is one of the best, because they say, yeah, that's who I am. That's why I do what I do. I never really thought about doing it that way or writing it down that way. So now when you set up the core values, that's followed by some other worksheets, but the vision statement. And again, you could start it off by saying, how many of you have a vision statement? Anybody want to guess how many raised their hand? None. They don't have vision statement. Now, they may have something that we would call that in their head, but they don't have, they've never formalized it. They never said, this is where I want to go. And then how am I going to get there? So, and then, you know, they get mixed up with what's vision and what's mission. And, you know, you got to explain that to them because again, so, and then I cut in with, when I'm doing that, then you get into the organizational goals, and then you finally get in with then I bring in the goal planning sheets and how they're going to do that. And obviously for most, again, they've never gone to the detail of doing something like that. At the very end, the very, very end, the last thing they have is a dashboard for what they're going to track financially and operationally. And I've created a dashboard that I give them. I say, here, if you track this monthly, you'll get, based on the goals you've set, you'll know whether you're attaining it. And I say, and I believe this, so I say, you have to track what you measure is what gets done. Okay. I think most of us have people who we ask to help us be accountable. Right, Linda? So they don't. And the question was asked about, you know, do they share? They don't want to share with people. I don't want to tell people I'm not doing really well or whatever. In this case, who might they want to share with? You. So you could help them make sure they implement this. This is only creating the structure. And then give them the dashboard helps them maybe measure, but it doesn't hold their feet to the fire. So they've got to figure that out. I don't know if I answered your question. Did I answer the question?
Thanks.
Okay.
When you do the annual goals review with clients, I've
Yeah.
got the book in front of me. Do
Yeah.
you go through all the various incarnations of goals development? I mean, they've got overall organizational and people and time management. Do you break that down?
Yeah. The one I pay almost no attention to is the time management one.
Okay.
I don't have the time. We don't have the time to do it. I mean, so I tell them it's there and it's very important, but you know, we're going to breeze, and I tell them I'm breezing by this one because we really don't have the time to get it done.
Yeah.
But the other stuff, yes, because where am I headed? I'm headed strictly to get the goals and action plans. That's what I could call it the goals and action plan process and be done with it. But mini business plan, I think, falls in there a little bit. So is it the annual goals review? Absolutely. Is it a nickname I put on it? Yeah. That's why the strategic planning book behind me has a lot more detail. And now when I present this to people, I say, you got two choices. One is you can be part of a group session, and we're going to breeze through this because we have to, or we can do it individually, one-to-one. But it's going to cost you because it's going to take a lot more time because we'll go a lot slower. Now, for those of you who've done strategic planning over time, we get all kinds of people. We get people who say, I want to do it on the weekend. I'm not a fan of that. If this isn't important enough to do during the business week, I wonder whether or not what are we going to get done? So this is so I treat that differently with each person. But I tell them, again, we're going fast because we're going fast.
Hank?
Sorry,
Yeah.
can I ask a question, Hank? You mentioned $8.95 per person. Is that for the annual goals review, or is that for strategic planning, or it's for either?
Either.
Either. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Obviously my cost is a little higher on the other end, but my thinking there was I'm seeing such a good return with people wanting more than this. It's okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I had it right for when I talk with other.
You got it. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, yeah. So
It also
it's,
sounds to me that if you're going to breeze through it, the way you use the word,
yeah,
that seems to me that that's going to invite some more coaching post class.
oh yeah,
Deeper into it. So that might
absolutely,
you
without question.
the way to lead into it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was the question? Robert, what was the question?
I was more asking that when you are going to use the format you spoke of breezing through it, getting through it quickly, that would invoke more interest in an ongoing coaching a condition to hold their feet to the fire, keep them accountable of doing that work after the dashboard is set up.
The answer to that is absolutely. And I upfront tell them, if you want more, obviously I can provide it. You may not want it, and that's up to you. But if you're here simply to fill in some pieces of paper, you're wasting your time.
Right.
This is all about having a map to get you to a better result. You've got to implement it. If you want more help, I'd be happy to work with you on making that happen. But yeah, so yes, you're right, Robert.
Thank you.
Hank, this is Sandy. Have you done any of this online in recent months when you've been securing yourself from home?
The answer is no. What I've done in the past, Jerry Quinn in New York gave me an idea really early on in this, and I stole it from her. Right, Linda?
Right.
That she offered to people to hold a half hour or hour session just to talk. And so what I did was I open it up and I do Mondays and Fridays. Right now, there's one being conducted by one of the people who was in my group that I would have normally been doing. Simply to say, okay, in the past week, here's what's happened. What are you doing? And I've had a lot of conversation. Are you getting ready to come out of this? Because there is going to be the day that you're going to come out. Are you going to be in business? And what have you got to do to get ready for that? Most are not overreacting. Some are. Overreacting in the case of being proactive. Some are just waiting, saying, I don't know what's going to happen. Some are getting very creative. I've got a limousine driver company. They've got 5 limousines. She actually got business this past weekend from 5 different clients. Now, she's not what they call a required business. So I don't know if the police would pull them over. I have no idea. But she actually had them taking people from point A to point B. Because everybody's in different area and everybody's different. Out here, they don't want you leaving, period. A big day here is to go to the 7-Eleven. So, which I'm sure is true for most, but
Yeah.
But it's so the answer to that is no, not so far. But what I just got was one of my clients is in the process of hiring 2 people, and I work with them on the selection process. So I'm doing it. But that's the first one. Anybody else?
Hey, Hank, it's Nancy. First of all, I really appreciate what you're doing. I think you're dead on. I had the opportunity last week to attend a webinar sponsored by a gentleman named Bob Wallace. And Bob's actually referred to as the leading Black entrepreneur in the entire state of Maryland. I've been fortunate enough to know him for the past 10 years. And in essence, to boil down his message, it's that every business, and he focuses on the smaller businesses, but every business, regardless of whether they did a business plan in January or not, has to go back and start again because of the environment that we find ourselves in. No one could have predicted this, and no one has the answers. So I think it's a really incredible opportunity for all of us to help figure out how to, first of all, capture their attention, get beyond that fear, if you will, and then work with them. So I'd like to also toss it out to the group, the idea of engaging people online. I had an experience last week, and I'm a seasoned presenter like the rest of you. I presented a class that I created called Presenting a Persuasive Presentation to 33 people online for 2 hours. And it was interesting to me because my first challenge that I hadn't really thought about, I'm not used to looking at my own slides. I don't know about you guys, but they're behind me, right? I'm used to looking at all your shiny faces out there. Well, in many social media platforms, this one was Blue Jeans. The largest number of people I could see at any one point in time was 6. I had the stupid slides right in front of me. So those are some of the things I think we could all brainstorm. Like I ask a lot of questions. I would actually go around and pull a name and ask and then make them turn their video on so I could see them. But I think we're all going to encounter different challenges in engaging people that we personally have not experienced or thought of ourselves.
Yeah, the methodology of how you deliver is will change. And
Yes.
and when they say you can leave or go or do whatever you want, there's gonna be people saying, I'm not going. I'm scared. But I need help. So yeah. And if you haven't used, excuse me, that's gonna happen again. I'm trying to kill. Nah. Somebody can figure out technology and how I can stop that kind of thing. I'd be good.
Take it off the hook.
Yeah,
Take it off the hook.
that doesn't help. I've tried that even. It's a stupid
Yeah.
the way this phone. All right, now we're done. We're good. Sorry about that.
Hank, I'd just like to share with the group and some of the people on the call, this may be a repeat story, but oh well. We did a webinar in partnership with the Chamber a week or so ago, the title of which was Resilient Leadership, but it was basically talking about, you know, either you had a business plan or you didn't have a business plan, it doesn't matter. This is a new universe, and now what? So something that's not included in the annual goals review, which we suggested on the webinar, was the first thing you need to do is a brandy new SWOT analysis. You know, given the new environment, how does that change from what you may have thought before? You know, your strengths may no longer be your strengths, and God knows the threats are different. So, you know, what we were suggesting is that that's the first thing folks need to do. And then from there, you can decide what you're going to do coming out of this, whatever that looks like.
What's the most recent, most recent version of annual goals review? I have one sitting in front of me that I used 122 years ago. And honestly, I'm going through and it says 2004, 2005. Do we have anything updated, or is that still the basic goals review, Wendy? Which is fine. I just wondered if there's anything.
No, it's definitely been
my
updated.
pages are yellow.
It's definitely been updated since then.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have the exact, without being in the office to see the actual copyright, but it's been updated.
Nancy, it's not dramatically updated like some of the other stuff.
Okay.
But it's updated. But, you know, like I told you, I made the decision to pull out the personal side of it. That was mine. Somebody else might say that you should have done both, or maybe in this environment, you would do both. It would take more time, but, you know, because people are going to be nervous just as a person, never mind their business. So it's a tough process. For all of us to figure out how we want to run our businesses, not unique to people who are running their own. But what is it they're going to try to do? You know, we have, I said to my B&I group last week, we got 40 people on a B&I. We're doing this with 40 weekly. And I said, you know, you've got to do a SWOT analysis. Okay. Crickets, because nobody knows, very few knew what a SWOT analysis was. And so then I said, I sent it out to them. My phone is ringing off the hook. Hank, help me out with this. How does that work? You know, and obviously, where's that going to lead them? Because they, what are my strengths, as was just said? Well, my strengths 2 months ago may not be my strengths today. If my strength was to stand in front of a group of 200 people on an ongoing basis to make presentations, you might have a tough job. So how are you going to deliver? Well, you got to deliver in a different way. You still do it, but you got to deliver in a different way.
What is it that you sent out to them? Is it one of the documents from either annual goals?
I just created a sheet that had strengths, nothing. It was an absolute nothing in terms of content. But saying to them, because they didn't know what I meant. So I said, I'll just send you a little sheet, these, and if you want to talk about it, call me. That's why the phone is ringing. So explain to me how this works. What kind of strengths would I list? What kind of limitations, or, what are the threats? They never really, before my threat might have been what I thought was a competitor. Now my threat is all kinds of things that I never had to face before. And opportunities abound. But how do I get to them? And that's going to be, challenges. I think somebody asked me the other day, hey, Hank, how do you feel about your business moving forward? I said, are you kidding? Their people are going to be begging for help. Now, what kind of help? And that'll vary from person to person, but I think this particular stuff is one of the things that most of them will need. Simple way to figure out where I'm going. Because now I got to go someplace different. Now I got to do things in a new world. And what does that world look like? And they don't know. I mean, well, what's the world going to look like? I don't know. I can't tell you. When is it going to happen? Who knows? For all the sports fans, everybody's in a panic. What are we going to do? We got nothing to watch. Now all the teams trying to figure out how to do that. They've got to change completely. So don't we. And so doesn't every person. I think every client you had historically might be a new client because their world got turned upside down and they never expected to ever happen.
Hey, Hank.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, hey. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's great. I was wondering, like your annual goal thing, obviously that's worked and you kind of align it to the calendar and that makes sense. And
yeah,
Linda mentioned, her take on it. Hey, there's this resiliency and she did that. And I agree with you. There's this huge opportunity right now because if people had a plan, as Linda said, you can throw that one away because it's, we're all starting over. If they didn't have a plan, they're maybe even more scared and nervous because they think maybe they would have been better off,
I agree.
If they had one. So, but can you think of what is the entree? What is the, Linda's was resiliency. Have you thought through like, here's the opening, like for right now that we're all kind of, this thing's just getting ready to take off depending on what region. What would you call it,
Well, no, I have not thought in specific, but as you're talking, and I've written a couple of things, but bottom line is, how are you going to get to where you're going? Where are you going to go? Kind of conversation, because how am I going to, well, I don't know where I'm going. What would you like it to be? I can create my world potentially if I know what I want that world to look like. I would suggest and when talking with people. And thanks for the question, because I think that's something I've got to take some time to really think about. How am I going to, what words am I going to use? Because the words are going to be as critical as whatever actions we might recommend. Because people want to say, help me be calm. As I can see from television, in every state in the United States, there's people saying, let me loose.
Yeah.
I don't want to be tied down anymore. They Now they got the next wave, they just had one in, I forget, it might have been here in California for all I know. But no, it was Georgia. If you're over 65, you can't come out until July 1. We might let everybody else out, but we're going to lock you. Are you kidding me? Good luck dealing with that one. It's not going to happen. I mean, for the healthy seniors, they ain't going to accept that. That's not going to happen. So how do you deal with things like? So for my business, you know, I've got to, ironically, you know, in each state dealing with it differently. California has decided that one of the last businesses that can come online will be hairdressers. They are getting pushback like there's no tomorrow. Because they're saying, no, don't, you can't let that happen. Well, okay, well, what's your business? And if you're in that business, now the massage therapist, talk about a one-to-one hands-on problem. One county nearby me. So the county I'm in says no. The next county over says, if a doctor gives you a note that says you need a massage, you can go get one. And that protects the massage therapist. I mean, this, to me, that's insane. One rule or no rule, but you know, crazy. So yeah, how we say it, Bob, I don't know. That's a great question.
You know,
Anybody got any ideas on how we say it?
I have a question for you, Hank.
All right.
When you get to it, Kim Stone King just chatted. Have you ever experimented with the LMS version?
For this process, no. Have I used LMS? Yeah, for everything but this. But I can't see why you couldn't, particularly if you want to do stuff online. I mean, LMS works fine, sure, as far as I'm concerned. So, no, I just have not.
Hank, just one other comment. Some of the folks that we've been talking to lately, even those who were good at planning and had a plan in place, they said moving forward, they're operating on 30 and 60-day goals and nothing beyond that, just because they don't know what they don't know. So it's like, let's plan for the next 30 days or 60 days, some of them to 90 days, but nobody is really, it sounds like nobody is looking much beyond that.
Well, maybe going back to what Bob asked, what we say is going to be critical. I don't disagree with the thinking that we don't know what's going to happen in the next 60 days. Okay. But do anybody here think that it's not going to be kind of entirely different than it is now? We're talking 60 days and the world got turned upside down. I don't think it's going to get turned upside down again, backwards, maybe the other to a positive, in another 60. Yeah. But if I say what's going to happen, where am I going to be to get ready for, and pick a date, October 1, November 1, December 1, where hopefully things are, quote, normal, whatever that's going to mean. Do I have to think out that far? Yeah, I think you do. Can you plan it? I don't know. It's tough. It's going to be, but you have to. So I would suggest, Linda, in my opinion, if I were asked that, I'd say coaching is the key. I mean, I client this morning for a horrible reason, but I coach with him monthly. And he said, this is the only thing that's keeping my head above water. Because we take the time to go through what are you going to do in the next 30 days? Are you going to do anything different? You're going to keep up doing what you're doing? What are you doing? Another client of mine has gone off and signed up for 2 training programs that said, I got the time to do it. I might as well be doing it now. I didn't do it before. So maybe that's the kind of advice we offer. But I think ultimately, and not too far down, having a plan And working on the plan is, you better, each of us have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that have a plan and think further down the line, but know that it needs to be probably more fluid than it's ever been before.
Oh yeah, no question.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, how did last year work, and we'll just extrapolate. Right. That's not going to work. What kind of input are you getting? I saw something, you probably all saw it. About 2 weeks ago, the farmers in the Midwest were dumping all the milk because they didn't have a method to handle extra that they couldn't sell. And then somebody stepped up and said, that's nuts. Here's what you do. And they started using it and not throwing it away. Yeah, we need creative people. When's the last time you think a farmer would say, I just throw it all away, don't worry about it? Not so good.
Hank, I think one of the pieces I know that I've been hearing from people around town and in my networking groups that were still very involved online is that how are they going to do this in the most efficient manner? People are starting to really look at processes versus just having a plan, because I think a significant part of this planning piece, and I'm so appreciative that you've really taught me a lot today about how I can introduce a plan to look at those processes, because everybody's going to go lean. Well, I mean, the fact is we're not going to have 40 employees. And again, I don't want to say that we're looking at efficiencies as much as we're looking at productivity. You've got the same people, but how are you going to get more out of them, because it's going to require more going forward to be prepared. And that really I see as a really unique piece that we could add to this annual goals review, now that I have my 2005 version of the questions. They're still quite pertinent.
Yeah, they are.
And especially from a staffing and somehow I'm going to change some of the questions to be process oriented, simply because that's where business is going to change. And I think we have a real opportunity. I'm like you. I just see this as a gold mine for us at Trusted Advisors. And if we really get out there and start talking about it, this is going to open tremendous doors for all of us to really turn back and live our purpose, if you will. And at the same time, make some good money if we tie the two together. You know, the soft skill part of what we do is not going to be nearly as relevant if we don't have the processes there first. And so I'm trying to combine the two, and you just gave me some great ideas. I thank you.
You're welcome. I can't agree with you more. I think as you were talking, one of the things that was hitting me was soft skills. Yeah. But they're going to be fewer people. I think a lot of companies are going to say, we're going to do this, as you just said, leaner and different.
Yep.
And, you know, for a number of years, I don't know how many years now, but how many corporations have thought about, you know, we don't need to have the meetings all at the home office. We don't need to bring everybody in from half the country and put them up in hotels and whatever. And now they say, I don't want to. And it's more efficient too. And we figured out how to use this. I don't know how many people never used a thing like Zoom. And that hit, you know, and who's coming after them? Microsoft with their Teams and saying, hey, you know, we got something better. And why? Because you can do this. We can get all together. And then when we shut it down, everybody goes back to doing what they're doing. They don't have to go and say, you know, spend the night. And so that kind of thing's going to change. There was the CEO of JetBlue was on TV this morning, and they got him on because the suggestion was, we now will have to show up at the airport 4 hours in advance. Yeah, I know. Good guy. And they said, well, what do you think of that? And he said, nah, we have to figure a way to efficiently get you into the airport and on the plane in the shortest amount of time. Well, that goes right to what you're talking about, Nancy.
Yep.
Process. They need a process. Do they need a plan? Yeah, but embedded in that is going to be a lot of process. And because it's the only way the only way we're going to survive a lot of this stuff. Anybody else?
Well, I think for Nancy on the staff moving around, I think that's also going to be a big opportunity where they're going to have people doing 2 or 3 roles or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's where the DISC and the values index, you know, who of these folks has, you know, high economic and maybe can do something with sales on a commission basis, or, you know, we need a real hard charger to run this department and do, you can look at your D or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think those tools are invaluable for all of that kind of work, as everybody here knows.
Yeah. You're right.
I agree. Absolutely. All right, we got any ideas from anybody else who hasn't offered up something? Any other questions about you? Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I'll put in a 2 cents worth here, but with my manufacturing clients that have come back online, and in Michigan, today was the day that everyone finally could. There was a few that were considered essential and operating before, but making sure that, like you, I joined this about halfway through, so I'm apologizing for that, but there's using a SWOT, making sure that we're walking through that, but I'm calling them critical goal categories, but you know, what are the key, with a lot of them, it was cash, safety, and customers. That was their top 3 CGCs, okay?
Yeah.
And that formed the basis of the 30-day or 45-day plan. And going through that plan and meeting either once a day or once a week with those guys on the phone, just throwing questions at them, making sure that the team was developing the plan, so that, you know, at first it was only those top 3, cash, safety, and customers. Now it's getting employees, because a lot of them enjoy unemployment because they're getting paid more on unemployment than they are for their regular salaries. And then team and talent, and based on the conversation, we're going to add process to that too, as categories, and they keep getting added to the plan. And then you're working individually with the managers to execute the plan. So, you know,
Really good
I spend
points.
a lot of time with these guys, but it's trying to use the process. But, you know, the CGCs are no more than 6 months out. That's about as far as I take them.
Yep.
And then the 30 and 45-day plans to get there. So
I would think, Jeff, that a lot of them are worried about how do you get the materials.
yeah, you're probably right. That's another one that's on there, but, you know, but that kind of fell under cash. You know, we
Okay.
got to buy the materials in order to make the nuts and bolts to, that kind of fell under the cash side of things, but so that's kind of what's been happening.
Well, thank you. That's good. Anybody else? No? Wendy, what do you think?
Are there any other questions that anybody has for Hank? Opening it up to any,
Or to anybody else?
or to anybody else? Yes.
No, you did a great job.
Nancy's over there raised her hand. What?
Yes, I'm being the good student in the room. I just, you know, take this for what it's worth. Not often I'm the good student in the room, I don't know.
That's true. That's true.
Thanks for your agreement. Would you be willing to share what your dashboard looks like? So that
Yeah,
we have
sure.
some sense, if you don't mind?
I don't
It's a
mind.
really valuable tool. I know.
I don't mind. I create, it's an Excel sheet. I'll send it to Wendy. She can send it out to all of you, I guess. Would that be the best way?
I can put it right up on the affiliate website under the Learning Lab. So when you click on this Learning Lab, you'll have the video as well as the Excel spreadsheet, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
Thank you, Hank.
It's just an Excel spreadsheet, and so for conceptually, on the left-hand columns are your goals. So whatever goals you have, and I broke them down into, you know, some financial, some sales, whatever. And I tell them they can have as many goals, obviously, they want, but You got to have your big ones first. And then all I did then was take that and say, okay, if I'm in February, 2 months have gone by, where am I? And extrapolate that to the end of the year and say, okay, 2 months have gone by. So you've kissed off 60 days. And based on what you've done in the first 60, here's where you'll be at the end of the year. Now, will it happen? Anybody's guess, but I'm using facts to do the extrapolation. I tell them that after the first quarter, you're starting to really see where you might end up. And maybe you need to start making some changes. Maybe what you put down as your process or a goal isn't really working for you.
Yeah.
So do you need to adjust? Or is it just cyclical? Is it your first quarter of the year is just not good and that's not what's going to be and you get more of it later? I don't tend to buy into that unless you get a really sick, if you're, one guy I knew sold fruitcakes. Does he have a particular time of year he's going to get his business? Yeah. But other than that, I don't know. Pretty much you'll get there's certain months will be slower than others, but overall, start looking at quarters. I said, by the half year, if you're not going in the right direction,
Yeah.
you better start taking some action.
Yeah.
Most don't have the numbers sitting in front of them that way. And all they've got to do to keep this dashboard up to date is put in their monthly number. Just put in the month, and it accumulates it all and does the math for them. So they don't have to do anything. And so each month they can just put their numbers in and, that's where I'm going to be at the end of the year. It scares someone. Yes, Linda? Yeah.
Hank, on those things that are cash related, obviously they can put those numbers in.
Yeah.
When they have non-money related goals, do they put that in as like a percentage of how far along they are to accomplishing it?
Yeah, everybody's different. It depends on what it is. For instance, let's go with, it's a number thing, but I want to hire 5 new people this year. Did I say when? I can, but the way this will work, it'll just say you're at the first quarter.
Okay.
If you said 5, you should be 1 point something. So yeah, you have to manipulate some of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Robert.
You talked about doing it in one session. You talked about it and doing it in 2 4-hour sessions.
Yeah.
I'm potentially working with a financial advisory firm.
Okay.
And the people I've spoken to so far, as we're warming up to an idea of doing some work for them, I know that they wouldn't give up 4 hours in a day. Do you think this could be effective in 4 2-hour sessions?
Sure, it could. But you would have to plan it out accordingly. And the only then I would look at it from my standpoint, saying, I've got to set it up for 4 2-hour sessions. Therefore, I've got, and particularly if I'm going to physically be there, I've got travel time now 4 times, not 2 times or 1 time. I've got to redo the setup, and I got to spend it and the prep. So I might up the ante, depending on how many people. Now, if it's one company, my costs are entirely different because they usually don't want to do what you're talking about. So I would look at it financially from your standpoint.
It would be virtual, so there'd be no
Oh,
trouble.
okay. Well, then it shouldn't be a big deal.
Okay.
You could easily do it, but you got to chop it. Just take the pieces and chop it. That's all.
All right. Thank you.
Linda, some of those pieces that you were talking about in measuring, well, they may not come straight. What I have found, I work with a group of 25 commercial printers around the country in a 3-hour meeting each month. And they have metrics. They've got to send that information. I don't know, Hank, how hard has it been to get them to have actual identifiable real numbers? And, one of the things we put out there is what's your sales per employee and what's the number of new clients and what is the dollar amount per new client that you bring in, whatever the business. And it was very interesting that and I guess I've done a modified one of these and didn't know what to call it, But interestingly enough, it took us a long time, longer than we anticipated, for them to even get their financials in order to be able to answer some of those dashboard questions. Then, so that's something I stumbled with to try to teach them first. They're
What
not
I-
all going to have those numbers.
Yeah, well, what I tell them is, first of all, you got to be first focused on your top goals, and you're only going to have a handful of those. Once you get those down, those are the ones you really want to measure.
Yeah.
Now, the rest of them, if you really feel they're critical to the success of the operation, then yeah, you're going to have to spend more time. And now you're going to, you want to get together with me? I'd be happy to walk you through it and work it out. Okay, yes, it's going to take time. But I don't like them get, some want to get, 40 things they're going to measure every month. I said, you're not going to do it. You're just not going to, unless you get an accountant that's going to do it for you. But if you're a small business, you're not going to do that. So how many can you have? And I suggest 10's about max, somewhere on the sheet. And so you can manipulate the sheet. And by the way, do what you want with it. I don't know. I don't feel any ownership. So, and if you make it better, please send it back to me. I'm a plagiarist. I love it. Yeah.
Well, we're at the 4 o'clock time, so I wanted to thank everybody for their time today and thank Hank for sharing his wonderful information with us. And I will be posting the video to the affiliate website as well as the dashboard that he sends to me.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
It's been
you.
fun.
Everyone,
Been
Thank
fun.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.